Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my channel if you're new. I hope you're having an amazing day wherever you are, and I hope you're staying safe. In today's video, we're going to talk about the list of forms that you will need for the entire packet, your initial application, and then we will talk about some of the things that you might want to know and prepare before actually beginning to put everything together. Quick disclaimer before I begin, I'm not an immigration attorney or any kind of specialist, so I'm speaking purely from my personal experience and the research that I have done. The first form that you will need is called I-130. I-130 is a form also known as Petition for Alien Relative. This is the initial form that you will be submitting to USCIS as a way to state that you now have a family member who you want to immigrate to the United States. And this is the first step in the entire process, which will establish your relationship with the US citizen who will then become your sponsor. Form I-130 is to be filled out by the US citizen. Obviously, you can fill it out together. What's important is this form is coming from the US citizen sort of petitioning to have their immediate relative, so their spouse, who is a foreign national, to become eligible to receive an immigrant visa in order to stay in the United States and continue their application for green card. The next form is I-130A, and this is an additional form that has to be completed with Form I-130. This form is also known as Supplemental Information for Spouse Beneficiary. So you as a foreign national spouse will become their beneficiary. So these two forms will go together hand in hand. The first form, I-130, will focus primarily on your US citizen spouse. Information about their employment, information about where they have lived. I-130A is the form that will ask a lot of additional information about you as a foreign national. So it will ask information about your citizenship. It will ask information about places that you have worked and lived previously. In addition to these forms, you will have to provide a lot of additional documents, such as copies of your birth certificates, passports, your marriage license, etc., etc. Again, I will go in more detail in the future videos on the kind of additional documents you will have to provide for these two forms. So these first two forms will allow you to stay in the United States for a short period of time and continue your application process for a green card, also known as adjustment of status. However, what a lot of people do, and what I've seen a lot of immigration attorneys do, is the entire packet, when you put it together, you will submit your adjustment of status application in the exact same packet. So the next form is I-485, again, also known as the adjustment of status. This is the form that is the official application for green card. So once the USCIS receives and approves your I-130 application, they can move on right away and continue their review process for your application for becoming a permanent resident in the United States. Again, also known as green card, also known as adjustment of status. So this part of the application and your entire packet will be the biggest part, because this is not the only form that you will have to submit. There's also additional forms that you will have to include together with your adjustment of status application. The first additional form is form known as Affidavit of Support, also known as I-864. The Affidavit of Support is a legally binding document. It is a form, but it is also a legally binding agreement that your sponsor spouse will sign, basically saying that they will from now on be financially responsible for you until you become a US citizen. So this is a requirement to be included with your adjustment of status application. Will basically request a lot of information about your spouse, their employment history, their current employment, all their tax information. Another form that typically goes with the application is Form I-693. So this form is a medical exam form to make sure that you're in good medical, physical standing. Even though this form is highly suggested to be included, it's a requirement to be included, but a lot of people don't include it in the initial packet, and this is why. So when I initially recorded this video, I have after that realized that I have made a mistake and provided not very correct information, so I'm going to do this insert now. If you choose to submit it with your adjustment of status application, you can. And once USCIS receives this form, it will be valid for 2 years while they're processing your application. However, with the delays, especially with the delays that are going on right now, it's very possible that by the time you receive your green card interview, there's a very high chance that your medical exam may be expired. It's recommended that instead of submitting it right away, you can wait until you receive your green card interview notice and go as soon as possible. Once you receive that notice, schedule an appointment with a civil surgeon and complete this form. It's very highly suggested that you actually don't submit it right away and you submit it later on. Of course, you will receive a scary looking letter saying that this part of your application is missing. However, don't be afraid. It's just a formality. Make sure that once you receive the interview notice, then you go find the updated form on the USCIS website, download it and fill it out. Make sure that you remember that in that form, you will have to fill out part of it about your personal information. The rest of it has to be filled out by the civil surgeon. It has to be given to you in a sealed envelope. And then once you receive it, that form on your hands will be valid for 60 days only. Typically, what I have seen from people talking on Reddit and other forums, people typically have been receiving their notice of interview about 2 months in advance. You will probably have time to schedule an appointment with the civil surgeon as soon as possible, and you will have an up-to-date medical form with you. There have been exceptions, very few that I have seen online, with people receiving their interview notices a week in advance. I don't know exactly why that happens, but it's kind of rare. And also be aware of the fact that some people have had their immigration interviews waived lately. Then they will just send you a request for evidence form asking for you to provide this medical exam. Again, keep in mind that's not something you have to include right away. Okay, and so the last two forms that you will have to submit, Form I-765, which is also known as Employment Authorization Form, and another form that you will want to submit is form known as I-131, and this is the form also known as Permission to Travel, and this form will basically allow you to leave the United States and come back without it technically being abandonment of your immigration status and without you having to receive a special immigrant visa in order to come back to the United States. So the reason why people submit forms I-765 and I-131 together with the adjustment of status is because when you submit these two forms together with your adjustment of status, you will not have to pay any separate fees for these forms. So these are the forms that you will need to fill out, and these are the forms that will be in your entire immigration packet. There's two more additional forms that you should include in your packet. First, known as G1145. This form will allow you to receive an email notification prior to you getting anything in the mail. This one will be almost instant. As they receive your application for review, you will receive an email. Just make sure to check your junk folder, because I thought I never did, and then I actually checked my junk folder and that's where it was. And then the other form that you will want to include is G1450. So this form is a authorization for them to use your credit card to pay for your application fees. What I want you to keep in mind is you will need to fill out two forms G1450 because you cannot combine those application fees. You must write a separate one for each application. and application fee for I-130, and then the application fee for adjustment of status. Now, in the second part of this video, I want to go over about some additional things that you would want to have handy before you begin filling out the applications and putting it all together. So, the first thing, obviously outline the list of documents. What I would also suggest is making a checklist in a Word document, and what this will also help you with is in the future when you have put your application together, you will have to submit a cover letter, and if you already have this checklist with all the forms, all the additional documents included, you can use it as a template for your cover letter. Make sure you know all the passwords for all the online accounts from which you will be getting information for these applications, such as knowing passwords and being able to easily log into your bank accounts, remembering your password for your tax information as well. Next, make sure that you have a really good idea of what agencies you can use to receive your information. Being able to request your tax information and being able to request your W-2s if you cannot access them, if you don't have the copies in your home, being able to request them from the IRS or from your employer, knowing how to reach out to your place of work's insurance agency. So just all of those things, keep in mind, being able to reach out to those, having numbers, emails on hand. Next, I highly suggest having access to a printer. I actually ended up buying a printer because I did end up having to print out a lot of documents. Next, create a folder on your desktop. Put the Word document with the cover letter and then all the forms, just blanks, download them into that folder, and every time you open it, you'll have a really good idea of things that you have to fill out. And next, I would also suggest making a physical folder with all the additional documents that you might need. So I have a folder like this, just a clip folder. In here, I have a copy of my passport, copies of our birth certificates, any translations, copies of my university transcripts, copies of our marriage certificates. So I have them all in here just in case, just to have, and I always have them on hand. Next, speaking of copies, make sure that you make copies of everything. If you have already started filling out paperwork, don't forget that you cannot include any original documents in your application packet because they will not be returned back to you. So make sure that you make copies of everything and you submit copies in your application packet, but at the same time, make another copy for yourself, just in case you get a notice that you have to provide additional information, say they misplaced something from your file, you will be able to easily access it and send it over to them. Make sure that you have a black ink pen that you can use for signing all the forms. Another thing I would suggest is what we did is prior to sitting down and filling out forms, my husband and I both created a separate sheet of all the places that we have lived and the dates where we lived and all the places of employment where we have worked previously and the dates when we worked in those places. It's extremely important that you have those available on hand as well. So it's really good to have just like a piece of paper. I wrote it by hand. Another thing, make sure that you have your parents' information as well, such as their dates and places of birth and their full names, legal names. I hope you found this video useful. Please let me know in the comments if you have any additional questions, if I haven't covered anything. Feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. If you have specific questions about your specific situation, I will be happy to help. So I hope you have a fantastic day. Continue to stay safe, and I will see you in my next videos. Bye.